We are live again. And let me just start by apologizing to our viewers and to our candidates for the sound travel. But we want to get this right. So we're going to start again.
Okay.
Then we apologize again, but if you could tell our readers what
Do we have an introduction?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so I'm Paul Kirby, and I'm a reporter with the Daily Freeman, and we're here for our first live stream debate between candidates for office, and this time it's for mayor. And we have three candidates here that are running for that office, and they are Ellen DiFalco, who is a registered Democrat running under the Republican and Independence banners. We have incumbent Mayor Steve Noble, who is seeking his second four-year term in that office. He's a Democrat, and we have Vince Rua, who's running for the first time for political office, and he is running under the SAM party banner, which used to be the Serve America Movement Party. So we're going to be asking questions that we have come up with at the Daily Freeman, and we got a few sent to us in from readers, and we will squeeze them in as time allows. So we're going to do this for an hour and a half. Ellen,
all right,
go ahead and give us an introduction.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm currently retired, and this was an opportunity that presented itself. I believe that everyone should have choices, and I did not think it was fair for the voters to let this seat go unchallenged. When Mr. Noble first announced, it was only himself running, and I decided to step up and do that. I weighed my options, and I decided that this was the best fit for me to run for mayor because I have extensive background in public service, and I believe I would be able to serve the public. The voters, of course, will decide this in November. I am a registered Democrat running on the independence line with Republican Party support. I'm no newcomer to politics. I previously ran for Ward 3 Alderman and as a county legislative candidate in District 6. I've been a resident and homeowner in this city for 47 years. I currently serve on the Kingston Library Board as trustee and secretary. I am also a volunteer for Ulster County RSVP. I've been a public servant all of my career. My passion has always been serving Ulster County and the city of Kingston residents and giving back to the community because it's been rewarding. And politics is taking care of people, and it should be an honor and privilege to do so. And it should be done because it's the right thing and not for political motivation. I will lead with integrity, and I will always tell the truth. It's time to send a woman to City Hall, and I believe I am the woman for the job. Thank you.
Okay. Steve.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
I really appreciate the opportunity today to speak with all of you and my fellow candidates here and to be able to answer your questions. For me, this is a great opportunity to reintroduce myself to all of our great voters here in the city. When I ran 4 years ago, it was my first time running for any public office. I was a civil servant from college for over a decade, working for our own city here in Kingston in the Parks and Recreation Department, working to serve our youth. And with that experience, it really grounded me into government operations and really got to really understand what our community needed. And when I was elected, it was such a humbling experience to be able to be responsible for over 300 employees, $45 million budget, and one where the mayor's office and all of the operations of city government really mean a lot to people. Everything from having your roads paved to your parks maintained to being able to make sure that, we are able to move our city forward economically, to be able to make sure that people can get around. And I think that with my background and my experience, I am the best and most qualified candidate. Even while doing this job and loving it every day, I wanted to further myself, and so just this past year, I recently completed a master's in public administration to just make sure that I am on the cutting edge of public administration today to be able to help lead our workforce and lead our community, as we move forward. And it really has been exciting for me. We've been able to accomplish some really amazing projects over the last 4 years, everything from securing over $30 million in grants to being able to see some of the largest gains in economic development in the city in the last couple of decades. And so for, I think, all of us, getting the residents involved has been an exciting challenge. And I think one of the things that we've been able to demonstrate is that we have been really open and transparent with our community here. And so I look forward to today's questions, and thanks again for having me.
Okay, Vince.
Hi, my name is Vince Rua, and I have a few questions for your audience. Are you unhappy with the lack of growth in living wage jobs in Kingston? Are you concerned about jobs for your children and grandchildren? Are you concerned with the increase in your property's assessment this year? Can you recall any years when our streets and sidewalks were in worse shape? If you answered yes to these questions, you should vote for me because I have solutions to these challenges. One thing with which I am concerned are the constant loans being approved by the mayor and the Common Council as reported by the Freeman. At some point, the Comptroller's Office could judge us to be in fiscal distress, defined as having exceeded 80% of our maximum taxing limit or constitutional debt limit. So how much has our debt grown under the current mayor? There's 3 components. There's debt that's issued and outstanding that gets reported to the Comptroller's Office. That's what they see. Then there's debt that you read in the paper every week, authorized. And then there's the mayor referred to over 30 million in grants. And, that's something to be proud of. But with every grant comes matching funds that the city has to come up with. So what are those numbers? Our total debt limit is $99 million. We have 27 million outstanding, 44 million authorized, but not issued. 17 million of matching funds, according to schedules I've received, that we have to come up with in matching grants. The total, 88 million. That puts us over 90%. And I'm concerned with that. I'm the only candidate talking about this possibility. I think I'm the only candidate that understands it, who has the skill sets necessary to guide Kingston away from a potential debt crisis and lead it back to the financial prosperity that I remember from the 60s and 70s. So very quickly, I was born at the Benedictine Hospital, grew up in Midtown off Andrew Street, graduated from KHS in 71, earned a BS degree in accounting with honors, started my career with Coopers & Lybrand and a Big 8 accounting firm. I'm a CPA, licensed to practice in several states. I ran some of the largest audits in the firm, from AT&T to New York State Teachers Retirement Fund, which had over 20 billion under advisement. I look forward to your questions, and I hope to earn your vote on November 5th.
Okay, so that completed. We will go on to the to the questions, and you heard the first one, but I'll repeat it anyway. The first question has to do with probably in recent memory anyway, the largest complex built in the city for market rate housing. It is uptown. It is called the Kingstonian. It has received its share of support and opposition or concerns. It is going through the process right now, the planning board process. In fact, there is something Thursday where 3 boards will get together and review the Kingstonian project. So we just will throw it out there to get whether you support this this project or not, and why on both accounts. Ellen, go ahead.
I have attended, I believe, almost all of the public hearings, the planning board meetings regarding this project. It's a monumental project for the city of Kingston. I applaud the planning board for their efforts, viewing the volumes and volumes of documentation and the many pages of reports that have been submitted for this project. I am not at liberty at this moment to support it or not support it until it has gone through the process that's absolutely necessary for this type of a project to evolve in the city.
Okay.
I will reserve judgment until after all of the processes have taken place.
Okay. Steve, this it has been reported, and I believe that you are on the Kingstonian webpage as being in support of this project. Go ahead, explain your position.
Yeah, so one of the things that, we did back in 2016 when I first took office was to put out a request for proposals to be able to find a development firm that would be interested in bringing in a multi-use complex at this vacant site here in Kingston. And so we wanted to be able to bring more parking to Uptown Kingston. We wanted to be able to bring more residential units and more hotel space to the heart of Uptown. We've seen the boom and bust cycle of Uptown for so many years, and we feel that this type of project is exactly what's needed, is exactly what's called out in our comprehensive plan. We want people to be able to live in our downtowns. And so not only were we successful in finding a family-owned and operated company to move that type of project forward, we were able to receive over $3.8 million out of our $10 million DRI grant to be able to put toward public parking and a public park. And I think that that is really critical for us to be able to continue to make sure that we're creating those amenities in our community. And so while the Kingstonian is going through the planning board process, and I know that our planning department and our planning board will do a good job, I am completely supportive of the concept of multi-use development, and I'm excited to see how the project comes out.
Just to follow up quick, and I'll get to you, Vince. A similar project, not a little bit bigger, was proposed a while ago with a firm from New Jersey. As you know, you were here, not as mayor, but around the city, and it was opposed on all different corners. I mean, it just didn't get any support except from the mayor at the time. And I'm wondering, but this project is drawing support by the business community Uptown mostly, and others who have come out and publicly spoken at either the public hearings or in written comments. Why do you think this project is drawing so much support, and they as compared to the opposition that was outright solid on that first one? Go ahead.
I think first of all, the previously proposed project exceeded our historic height limits. They wanted to build a 12-story tower. And if you look at the drawings of the Kingstonian, you'll see that it doesn't go above 4 floors. And so it will be the same building height at North Front Street and Wall Street, which was going to be the big difference. And I think that with the DRI process, we've been talking about this multi-use development with the RFP and the DRI since 2016. And so we've really tried to incorporate community involvement, community input. And I think that this Thursday's meeting is a showcase of that, because it'll be one of the first times we're having a coordinated review where the planning board, the Heritage Area Commission, and the Historic Landmarks Preservation Commission are all meeting together to be able to evaluate, provide feedback, for this type of project.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
I'm the only candidate that spoke out at the last planning board meeting in support of this project. I had concerns originally. For the most part, they've been addressed. I believe, and I said this at the last planning board meeting, that this is the right project for Uptown, and it will be a catalyst for Uptown. I told a little story, the story at this planning board meeting. The story was, my wife and I dined at Palizada's one Saturday night. We finished around 9 o'clock, but we had a window seat that looked right down Wall Street. And there was not a lot of foot traffic on Wall Street between 8:30 and 9 o'clock, 9:30. We went out for a walk afterwards. We passed Chops, Etcheterra, both closed. We passed the Wildebeest, 2 tables. That's all that was being utilized at prime time on a Saturday night. So clearly, Kingston Uptown needs more density of population. And this project will give Kingston that. So I also mentioned that I didn't feel that the divisiveness that exists around the project should reflect negatively on the developers, nor on those opposed. Everybody's entitled to have their opinions. I personally think that it reflects a lack of leadership from the mayor and not building consensus among all stakeholders. So I have said, and I'll repeat it, and I'm glad that we're now having some meetings amongst all stakeholders. I said before, and I'll say it again, I hope the mayor brings all stakeholders together and builds consensus and gets this project approved.
Yeah, I get that. How, if you were mayor, how would you do that?
I would do the same thing that Steve is doing right now. But
I mean to bring people together. You say you're saying he hasn't been able to bring people together.
Well, I don't think that the developers were fully aware of the pushback that could come from the tenants union that is talking about affordable housing. And why is there not 10 to 20% of affordable housing if you're using the model, the multi-use district that says you can? I mean, I think that should have been on the table from the beginning, but it wasn't, I presume. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it now. The pushback from the historic societies, I think that all could have been flushed out before the process began, compromises made, and then as we move forward, it would be on a more united basis. So I would have tried to build consensus earlier on.
Okay, Steve, that's sort of, he's sort of saying there was a lack of leadership involved in the planning.
So I think, there has to be a public process, and that's where these conversations happen. They should be happening publicly. They shouldn't be happening behind closed doors ahead of time to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And so I think that's, I'm glad that we're having that process. I'm glad that people are speaking out either for or against or providing suggestions. I think that's critical. But I do also think that, this project is trying to meet, and as it was designed, is trying to meet one important need in Kingston, and that's parking. By adding 100+ spots of additional parking above and beyond all of the uses, and so of the building. And so we all want more affordable housing in Kingston. And I think my administration has shown time and time again that we have supported affordable housing. We have offered pilots to support affordable and workforce housing, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
Some people say this is not affordable housing.
Oh, again, this is not. Nope. Yeah. We are definitely, though, I think the point is that we need to support all housing types in Kingston, which includes middle income housing.
Okay. Ellen, you want to add anything to any of that, or we'll go on? Okay. All right. So this is another question that we had. Back in July, the city took the unprecedented step of posting tips on its Facebook page about what people should do if federal immigration officers stop them in public. The mayor has gone on record about this already, but we'll get him again on it. But what do you think, Vince? Was this a good idea or not?
I think immigration is a federal issue, and I think that when mayors weigh in on it, they muck things up. So I think that if we're concerned truly with documented and undocumented immigrants, as mayor, we should be concerned with providing for safe and legal housing. It bothers me when I read in the Freeman that a bus from Honduras comes in and 8 or 10 people are jammed into one room. That's not safe and legal housing to me. I don't think the mayor has addressed true affordable housing. and workforce housing. So we need more housing. I think we have to provide for a better pathway to citizenship. I've been talking to the Hudson Valley Legal Aid Society about what different programs exist in other communities. Albany has some good ones to speed up and help people through that immigration process if they're here and they want to go through the immigration process. We have to have jobs. We have to have programs for these people to be able to live. It bothers me to drive up Broadway and see 25, 30 people looking for 10 hours of work at $8 an hour. I can't tell you how many calls I've had from voters saying, how do I compete? My competitor is hiring people at $8 an hour under the table. So we have to have jobs. I mean, I hate to bring up potholes, but the streets have to be safe. If somebody drives a 20-year-old Honda Civic and hits a pothole and severs a strut, that's going to be a devastating expense for them.
Okay.
So I feel we should be worried about the people and not about a wall and immigration control.
Okay, but I'm guessing your answer is you don't think this was the right thing to do, but I don't know. But I just need, a direct answer.
My
to
answer?
The mayor putting on the Facebook page advice to people being approached by federal officials. Some commented that he was aiding and abetting criminals. I mean, what's your position on the city posting that kind of information to undocumented workers?
I'll give you two answers. I'll
Okay.
answer the first question as directly as I can.
Yes.
I don't think that was right.
Okay.
Okay. When it comes to Sanctuary City, you can go back to the archives. And when I spoke about when it was originally proposed, and I said, in conclusion, I'm not here to ask the Common Council to deny this resolution. I simply think you should table it and do some impact studies to see what impact this could have on the city of Kingston.
Okay.
And in a very short period of time, within a year, there was a gruesome murder. I grew up here. I don't remember ever a gang killing where they severed, they chopped up somebody and they buried him in Ulster Landing. The four guys lived in Kingston. And when they were asked, why do they live in Kingston? The answer was, because it's safe. We're not going to be bothered. Go to your Freeman. That's what it was reported. Holly and Billy Weishaupt were told. So, I think that we have to be careful here and just be a little bit more circumspect.
Steve, go ahead. You spoke to this before, but.
Yeah. So, I think clearly, my opponent is not supportive of having undocumented immigrants living here in our city. And I think that that's wrong. And I think that, as a city and as a mayor, we represent everyone that lives here, whether they're documented or not. And there are no facts related to the fact that that gang that lived here for a very short period of time that were participating in a murder outside of our city limits had any fact of being here just because we are a welcoming and inclusive city. So I would just check your facts before you say things like that. But the second thing is that I think it's really important for us to recognize that federal immigration is, as you said, a federal agency. They can do what they want. They have jurisdiction in every community, but I don't believe that we need to spend our local taxpayer dollars working on their behalf. And so that is why we passed our welcoming and inclusive community resolution, so that our Kingston Police Department will not assist in that work, because I think we all hopefully agree that our federal immigration system is broken and that it needs to be fixed. And I think as mayor, I'm doing what I can to help on a local level. And that includes, fielding calls from local constituents. Just yesterday, a very well-known local family who has an amazing restaurant in downtown Kingston had their chef picked up by ICE. And so that shouldn't happen, because this individual, was, in the restaurant working. And that is not how our federal immigration system should work. There should be opportunities to have a court trial. There should be lawyers, and it's broken. And I think that I can do what I can, and that includes posting educational information on a website.
Right, which was not made by the city. It was a pamphlet of some sort made by an immigration rights group, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to respond to some statements that he made.
Quick.
Just a minute.
Yep.
So I did not say, and I am not against undocumented immigrants being in the city of Kingston. I never said that. I said the city of Kingston should improve the pathway to citizenship for such undocumented immigrants. That's totally different. And Steve is trying to spin the story. It's not what I said.
So will you work
As far
with
as, excuse me, I have the right to speak. I didn't interrupt you.
Just wondering if you were.
No, don't interrupt, and I won't interrupt you. So then Steve is saying that I can't rely on what the Freeman reports. The Freeman reported, check it out, the DA and the senior special investigator said that these 4 ended up in Kingston because they didn't feel they were going to be hassled. Now, if I'm interpreting that differently than all of your viewers, fine. But that's what I said.
Okay.
And I am not against undocumented immigrants.
Ellen, we got to get you on this.
Okay, thank you. I believe the question was.
Do you think it was right for the city to post that information?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It wasn't the administration's job to interfere. And I believe that it was misplaced. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Okay, I think we can go on. Yes? All right. So the next one is soon the city's, the state plans to embark on what will be the single largest new infrastructure project in the city in recent memory. I can't remember anything bigger than this roundout project is going to be as far as new infrastructure.
Roundout or roundabout?
Roundabout. What did I say? Did I say roundabout? Oh, sorry.
Well, the roundabout Worth Street Bridge will probably be the largest. I think that's going to be 40 million.
Except,
yes.
Except that that's not on its way to being done, right? Is it?
Starting next year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they said.
That's what they say.
Okay. Anyway, this roundabout project has been talked about for some time now, even before Steve Noble became mayor. I think it was about 9 years ago.
This is the location on Chandler Drive and Albany Avenue.
Yes. And so, again, this is a project not unlike other projects in the city of Kingston that has opponents and supporters. And I guess we will just get you guys to tell me what you think about it. Ellen, go ahead.
Well, I believe the project has been on hold for quite a few years now. This project, maybe in 2009, was talked about. There were pros and cons. People still are not happy with it. And when it was originally proposed, it did not indicate that the city was going to be on the hook for the millions of dollars worth of infrastructure that we are now responsible for. It's unfortunate that they're not able to suspend the building of this roundabout. I'm not even sure whether it's going to be the solving of all of the backup of the traffic from 587 to Clinton Avenue. I wish there was a way that we could table it.
Just don't do it, right?
Just don't do it.
Yeah.
And now the state came back how many years later and said, yeah, well, now we're going to go for it. And when they opened up the bids are now too high. So now what happens?
The are you concerned about the estimated cost of this project? I mean, well, it is a state one, at least the roundabout
it's still
itself.
our money.
Yep, and it has risen by the millions.
So now what
since it
happens?
was proposed.
So now what happens? They put it on hold for another year or so, and they're going to reopen bids. And what do you think will happen in another year or so? You think the prices will go down?
Right.
I doubt it.
Okay.
So here we are. We're stuck with a project that pretty much nobody wants.
Steve.
One, I do think people want it. I think that the intersection is beyond repair. If you look at the concrete today, it's the same concrete that was poured in 1950-ish when they created the roundabout.
The intersection.
The intersection when they put 587 in, basically.
Yeah.
So New York State, this is a state-funded project, and we are, trying to do a better job planning out our infrastructure work. And so when the state came to us and said, look, we're going to spend this money to fix this intersection, do you need to look at your sewer and water lines and what condition are they in? We looked at them. They're all 100 years old. They're in bad condition. And so this is the time for us to fix them so that it can be planned out and not in an emergency where then the costs are twice as high. And so New York State is gone back out to bid. I think the bids are due this week. We're hopeful that the cost estimates come in lower in the price range that they have. And then we're going to be able to work with the state to make sure that when this project gets started, that it has less of an impact on our residents as it can, because we know that it's a busy traveled intersection. But we do believe it's going to get better. And with the grant funding that we have to fix the Clinton Albany Avenue traffic light by the Governor Clinton Apartments, this is going to work out much better for us because we're going to be able to really change the traffic pattern in Uptown. It's going to be safer for pedestrians and bicyclists, and it's going to be better for motorists. If you just look at the number of car accidents there, it's high. It's one of the high crash intersections that we have in the city. So I am supportive of the concept. I do hope that the state can get their act together to get this done, and we plan to work with them to try to help.
Thanks.
Well, if we go back to my opening remarks, I'm concerned with the amount of debt that the city has taken on, especially in the last 4 years. So I think we went from 5 million to 12 million.
Yeah, that's about right.
So I'm concerned with that. I wasn't around when
that's for the state project.
Yeah. So I guess I would say if I'm elected mayor, I would see where we are in the process, and if there's any possibility that we could redirect the state to choose a different option. Now I'm told that there's another option that only cost $5 million, which had to do with changing lights as opposed to building a whole roundabout. I think we should engage with the state and see, based on our fiscal situation and the amount of debt we've accumulated, whether they would consider allowing us to go to option A instead of option B.
Okay, so yeah,
So
you
I
said
would-
when you became mayor, but do you support or not support this getting done, this roundabout?
I don't think it's the right solution to the problem.
Okay, that's a direct answer. Thanks.
Could I talk about debt for a second?
Yes, because he keeps bringing it up.
So-
Okay, yes, you can address the debt thing and also address the thing about matching grants. He says you say 36 million. I'm not sure what it was, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, obviously municipalities need to borrow money. That's how we are able to move these big projects forward. Most people can't buy their house with cash. And just like the city can't fix a major sewer project with cash, it just doesn't make sense to the taxpayers because you have those large cash payments coming out all at once out of the treasury. And so you borrow for it at interest rates that are less than 1%. Most of the time, we have an excellent bond rating, AA.
Been that way for a while.
Yes, and so we get really great rates. And so when we look at the cost factors of these major projects, we look at how much can we bond for, and we're not anywhere near our constitutional limit for debt. And one way to be able to prove that and showcase that is that when you look at the New York State Comptroller's fiscal stress score,
yes,
we have a 6.7 out of 100, which is one of the lowest. And it's almost the lowest of, any big city that has the kind of environmental factors that we have. And so I think it just goes to show that, we have great fiscal health. yes, we are borrowing money, but if we don't borrow money to fix things that are broken in our city, the city is going to fall down and no one's going to live here. And so our tax base will leave, the residents will leave, the commercial businesses will leave, and we'll still then be left with failing infrastructure. Now we're doing it in a way that's smart. We're doing it with grant money so that instead of costing the taxpayers 100%, it's costing the taxpayers sometimes nothing. Sometimes it's only costing them 25%. And so that's why it's really important to
you're
understand
talking about
this.
the grant money now,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay.
And so
the
that's
matching funds.
Yeah. And so that's the other piece is that we do have grants that require matching funds. Some of this we have to bond for and borrow for. Some of the matching funds are other grants. And again, we publicly display all of that information. But again, we really encourage people that if they have questions about our debt limit, we have a really amazing CPA named John Toohey that they can call and be educated about. And again, John doesn't work for me. He works for the Common Council. So it's that independent third party person to talk to and to be able to respect. And he's worked for 3 different administrations. And I think people generally respect the work that he does.
Is there any, do you have a number, and we're trying to make it simple, of how much grants the city has gone out and borrowed and how much of that is matching?
Yeah, and so we have it all on our website. You can actually look at a chart that actually shows all of the grant money, how much of a match is required, and whether it's cash or in kind.
Right.
And again, going to the Common Council and asking for authorization, once you understand the process, you recognize that most of those authorizations are actually for the full grant, the full project amount, even though the grant is going to pay us back. That's why we don't have to bond the whole thing.
Okay. Ellen, do you want to weigh in on all this? Do you think the city is going?
I'm confused as to where this conversation went.
Yes.
We were talking about the roundabout, and then we jumped over to our.
Well, Vince kept bringing up the fact that the city.
Grants,
I know, but
total grants.
Total grants,
and whether or not they're all displayed on the website. I saw a report that was dated in March, so I don't know whether it's actually been updated or not. So those reports are supposed to be available quarterly. And I don't believe they are.
Do you think, though, like Vince does, the city is doing way too much borrowing?
Oh, I believe that's absolutely correct.
Okay.
I was at a
Mayor says you got to do it to fix stuff.
I was at a finance meeting the other night, and that's all they did was bond for everything. I'm not sure whether, well, I believe Steve might have mentioned the fact that some of the grants that are there are either matching funds or no funds. And to say that
I mean, if the state's going to, just for example, state's going to give you $5 million, right? But you got to put in $1 million. Wouldn't you go, well, it sounds like a good deal to me?
Sounds like a great deal. Yeah.
And,
we have to try to figure out if we can afford it. And that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing with all of these grants. I mean, if they're going to be matched half or 10% or whatever, we still have to figure out whether
so you're questioning whether the city can afford pay these matching grants.
Correct. Absolutely afford.
Okay. All right. Let's go, Vince. we got to get.
I have a minute to rebut.
Well, nobody really said anything personally about it.
May I please?
Go ahead. All right. Go ahead.
So for your viewers, the fiscal distress test that the controller applies is driven by the city's essentially audited financials, which is a balance sheet. It doesn't include off-balance sheet debt, which includes the authorized and unissued debt, and it certainly doesn't include matching grants that we have to come up with next year or the year after. When you add all of that in, we're over what Elliot Auerbach says is safe. And I'm concerned about that.
Okay. All right, we're going to go to something else.
And we're going to go ask Mr. Rua the first question this time. Just change it up. We're going to go that way now.
That way, this way?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so the state recently passed a state law that gives cities like the city of Kingston the ability or the permission to establish rent control laws or rent stabilization laws. I guess we will. We see rents increasing in the city at larger complexes recently. Some say, that's because they want to beat this, beat this tenant law when it goes into effect. Others just say they want to pay off their big debts that they are paying for these buildings. Anyway, I figured we'd get your positions on this tenant stabilization law, and whether or not, if you were mayor, you would support having this pass the Common Council. Go ahead, Vince.
Rent control is absolutely not what is needed in Kingston to protect our citizens who cannot afford their rent. In fact, it will accelerate gentrification and displacement by forcing landlords to protect their investments preemptively, raising rents and evicting tenants before the ETPA, that's the acronym.
Yeah.
But I'm going to call it rent control.
Yeah.
Before rent control's effective date, which we are already beginning to see. The problem is that the current mayor has not introduced any new, meaningful, affordable, or workplace housing in 4 years. As I see it, we have one main issue, and that is the lack of units that are priced so that one's rent is less than 30% of one's income. If we had these units, those whose rents are being raised to market levels in Dutch Village, as an example, would have alternatives. Rent control does not work because it actually creates more pressures for those that are supposed to help. Over 80% of Kingston's housing stock was built before '70. Renters will be living with worn appliances, floors, and never see another paint job in their lifetimes if rent control is adopted. My solution: I have met in 2 weeks since the last debate. I met with representatives of larger rental complexes controlling over 1,500 rental units in Kingston. There's only 1,800 that are affected by rent control. From local-based developers to those the mayor refers to as unscrupulous, all have agreed that if I am elected, they will limit rent increases to 3% for the next 36 months. So we don't need rent control. They've already agreed to 3%, and that's about where rent control would take it. Okay.
But do you have concern, though, that landlords making promises will be kept?
Well,
this would be a law.
Well, if I'm mayor and they don't keep their promise, then we'll deal with that.
Okay.
Okay. But I have other solutions. So if I were mayor, Energy Square is supposed to be for affordable housing. I would go to RUPCO and I would ask them to give preference to 50% of their units for people that are affected by recent rent increases. I don't think there's more than 15 or 20. But so we've taken care of people that have had that $300 rent increase. When you combine that with my Affordable Plus housing initiative, which will create 300 to 500 units in pretty quick order, it's a win-win. So once again, I feel our mayor has demonstrated a lack of leadership and failure to comprehend the big picture. He's suddenly for rent stabilization, saying what a vocal minority is telling him to say, not what is best for his constituents.
All right, Steve.
So, rent control is needed, and, we needed it before, but until the state passed the legislation, we couldn't have it. And so now this is exactly why we need it, because we have large landlords, the ones that Mr. Rua has worked with, I guess. I really wish that he could have had conversations not about limiting their rents to 3% in the future, but telling them to stop raising rents of people on fixed incomes to $350 more a month. That should have been the conversation. But that aside, I do think that rent control is needed, and we will, after doing this vacancy study, be able to give the Common Council the information that they need to help protect our tenants. This is focused on units, 6 units or more. These are all out-of-town landlords who own these large complexes. They have the ability under rent control to get anywhere from a 0% increase to a 3% increase. And because of the work that we've done on rent control, we've also been able to look at other models, including Ossining. And when Ossining passed their rent control, we can follow suit, and also have a look back period, which means that for those tenants who have seen these unscrupulous landlords raising rents $300 or more a month, we can go ahead and reduce those back to a certain period. Ossining used 6 months before rent control went into place. And so that exists. And that's why we need laws, because building owners change. And whether they, will tell you in a conversation that they're going to not raise rents, we can see that that's happening right now. And we also have a track record of supporting affordable housing. I'm not sure about my opponents, but I do know that we have tried to get as many done as possible, including Energy Square and Landmark Place. But unfortunately, Landmark Place was really not wanted by many in the neighborhood, many of which are supporting my opponent.
Lace Mill.
Yeah, Lace Mill happened just before I took office.
Yeah, okay.
But
you expect that this, if you get elected again, you get 4 more years, you expect that this will become law?
I do.
This tenant thing?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Ellen?
Well, the $32,000 housing study is supposed to tell the administration whether or not we have a 5% or less vacancy rate
Right.
of the units that were built before 1974. I believe that may not take place before the end of the year. I'm not 100% sure how long this study is supposed to take place.
2 months.
2 months?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
They can coordinate with our building and safety department and do their mailings and contact the landlords, and hopefully they'll have enough of the cooperation to tell us whether or not we're at 5% or less. I'm not really hopeful if that's going to take place.
Okay, so but if you were mayor at this current mayor is strongly supporting this Tenant Protection Act and the Common Council making rules. If you were mayor at this time, would you do it?
I'm not really sure whether that's going to be our answer. Our problem right now is we don't have enough units to sustain the individuals that are trying to find housing. And,
okay, so you would not support this if you were mayor right now, right? Okay, all right. Let's go on. I think to another one. The Common Council has been historically a check and balance on what the mayor does and says. Do you think, and this goes for all three, do you think this current Common Council, given its makeup, which in my history of doing things, I have never heard of council without a Republican on it. But do you think this Common Council is serving as an effective check and balance on what the mayor says and does? Ellen, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I would have to absolutely say no. I see them every month. I go to their meetings, the finance, the laws and rules, the general government. There's no checks and balances here. Unfortunately, they pretty much rubber stamp everything that comes through.
Is that healthy? Why is that a bad thing?
No, it's not. It's not healthy at all.
Why is it not?
It's there's no give and take. There's no nobody's standing up or sitting there and arguing the point that perhaps we should look at other alternatives. Everything is just rubber stamped. Go. Yeah, we're good at that. Anything Mr. Mayor says is a fact, we're going to go. We're going to approve it. No questions asked. It's a good thing. It's done.
And going to the meetings like you do, you've seen this over and over
again. Over and over and over.
Okay.
And it's sad. we don't another chemistry and another makeup of the Common Council with another.
A little dissent.
Yes.
Steve, I know you've talked this before, but go ahead. It is a common situation.
Well, I think it's what's important to think about is that dissent should exist just for dissent's sake. I think that if people have actual opinions that vary, they should and do talk about that. And I think that I can show you many times that many things get sent to committee for further dissent for those questions that come up. I think that our Common Council members are all independently elected from the wards that they represent, and those wards are electing people who have ideology very similar to mine. And so most of us are Democrats on the Kingston Common Council, so we do generally have the same policy. We care about public transportation, we care about police, we care about having efficient government, we care about keeping taxes low. And so when it comes to the issues that we have to deal with together from council and mayor's office, sit down, we can have these conversations, and we in good compromise-based legislation that is healthy. And I by no means ever feel that anybody send upstairs to the Common Council gets stamped, because there are lots of communications I have to have, and that the public has, because these council members won't be reelected if they're only doing what I say. They need to represent the constituents, because if they don't, they're not going to get elected. And so I do think that there is such a balance, because I think that our residents of these wards are the checks and balances.
Okay.
Hold on a second. We're having some technical difficulties. Let me just pause it for a second to make sure that the stream is kind of. I'm gonna have to start it probably.
Oh no! From the beginning.
Well, we have the whole stream is archived, so we're not gonna lose any. It's just that we're currently having.
Imagine if we had to start over again.
Oh God.
Where are we starting from?
From
for you.
Give me a second.
Not yet. Yeah. This is
So bad as on
this is something.
Yeah.
No, she doesn't have to.
I got it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me just restart this. And I'm gonna